now, but they got a lot more equipment to do it with and everything than we had. But we had to read the water meters. Don't make any difference whether it's raining or what's snowing or what. They had to get out and do it. And now they have just regular water meter readers, and they got soft to what we had to do.
So do you have to run to check the water meters, or did you get a drive?
Well, we Drew wasn't allowed to. He couldn't run all over Adams and put it around the family. But then when I was in school, they Roosevelt had started these programs. Of course, he started a lot of good programs that brought us out of the Depression. They started the WPA for one thing, and they put water and sewer in a lot of the towns, and they've done a lot of conservation work and planted trees, and I don't know, just a lot of good work. And then that gave people work. Then they started these rural electric companies so the farms could have electric, because the companies wouldn't come out to electric because it cost them too much to get out there for no more than they had. So that helped too during the war, because some of the farmers got electric and they could use electric motors and things to take up the slack where the guys had to leave for the army. But they also built outside toilets that was sanitary. That was one of the things. Of course, they built them in the towns too, because the towns didn't have sewage either. And that was one. Of course, before them come, you couldn't upset them. But before that was one of the things that always happened at Halloween. The outside toilet got upset. Well, I guess that's it, huh? Anything else? Yeah.
Barb, is there anything else you want to talk about? Or question? Any other questions you want to ask?
So this is the tape recorder that you brought down to have me interview.
Yep.
You did a good job, Jane.
You can always talk about how wonderful your children are, and your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren.
Not to mention your
And
daughter-in-law.
the in-laws.
Your son-in-law, right?
Yeah, you can tell how wonderful we were at school and everything, you know.
No, let's not go there.
Oh.
Well, there's a teacher, a kid with a ruler, and they got $6 million. My dad and mom had been multi-millionaires. I started getting paddling in the first grade, and I never stopped till I got into the stage.
So which one of your kids would you say was the rowdiest?
Well, Tom, you can be safe and answer one that's not here.
You could. Yeah, you could.
I'd say Connie, probably.
Connie, yeah.
Here's number.
Not here.
I don't know.
Barbara put it down there?
She's in there.
Okay. You got some big paper.
So you don't have any dirt on this one, Gramsci?
Yeah, you got any bad stories on Dad? that he always says he was a good boy, so we don't know.
They hid them pretty well for me. Him and Larry did.
That's a good boy.
Yeah,
You're trying to
in
convince your
school.
dad or yourself.
In school, that was the thing we couldn't understand. The teachers would say he was so good, and we couldn't believe it.
He was bribing them.
One bribe me.
Yeah, Kelly and I have that
Yeah,
same
they gave
thing
me
with
this,
Lydia. She goes and she plays with her friends at church, and all the teachers always say, "Oh, she was such a good girl, and she played nice, and she shared," and we are just astounded because she's not that way at home. But I guess that's the best. If they're going to be nice, you want them to be nice out in society, and ornery at home.
What's some of your favorite memories from either growing up or when you're from now or from when?
Like when of course, we had about 3 to a bed, sometimes 4. And he's talking about the bed bugs. That was a ritual every spring. He cleaned the beds and used kerosene of course, you had steel springs, steel beds and things. You'd always go around. We never did have them that I knew of, but every year he cleaned up because they was around all the time, bed bugs. And there's a little song they put out that said, "June bug, it has pretty golden wings, and the firefly has the flame. The bed bug don't have no wings at all, but he gets there just the same." And you'd go out after you thrashed. You had what you call a mattress cover now, but we call it a bed tick. You filled that with straw, and you slept on that. So you had new straw about every year to put in it, and then they had what you call the feather tick, and it was filled with feathers. That was for winter. You get down in that, and a lot of covers on it. Although get out and bed in, maybe step in snow, but because the windows, they have a little place there that wasn't sealed good or something. Of course, we didn't have storm windows or nothing then, and the houses wasn't insulated, and you only had a coal or wood stove to heat the house. He would go out at night, and you had a water bucket. You didn't had to carry in water by hand and from the well. That water bucket sometimes would be froze clear to the bottom when you got up the next morning. And so it was pretty cold in there, but anyway, we got through her. And I don't know what else. But we walked everywhere we went about, and a lot of people back in the hills never left home. Maybe once in a while they could take a wagon trip or a buggy trip into town, but most of them, a lot of them never did leave home. They just, and the stores had what they called a huckster wagon, and they would fill groceries and all kinds of supplies in it and drive out in the country to certain places and stop, and people would walk or usually walk to it, buy what they wanted, and take their eggs and butter and cream and stuff, and they would buy it off of them or trade it for coffee and sugar and flour, stuff like that. And I guess like Granny Fitch in that there, so although she didn't live so far back like some people in Adams County did back in the real hills, but I don't think she ever went anywhere but to church. I knew that. And they had the washing machines, not washing machines, they washed in a wash tub, and they had sometimes you could have they'd have a wringer that you'd wring it through, but a lot of times all they had was their hands. They'd take two and wring them closed, and then put them in another water and get them out of there and wring them by hand again, and take them out on the clothesline and wash them, and they had big heavy irons that they put on the stove to heat them and press the clothes. And I'd think them women who had strong arms could lift anything big, but they'd probably weigh 5 pounds. You'd arm your clothes with, and that was the thing after Roosevelt got all these programs started. They started making a little money, and the factories opened back up, and they started making the washing machines and stuff like that, and the sewing machines and farm equipment, and a few tractors, and so things got better about 36, 37 in there, and then by 40 it was doing a lot better than what it had. And out Calvary, that was one of the programs they had during that time was Harry Grooms would go out, they paid him to go out to Calvary and put on stuff to learn people to do things. And me and another boy, we'd run out there every night, and then if we didn't fool around too long, we could ride back with him, with him, but sometimes we wouldn't, so we'd have to run out and run back both. That was 6 miles out, 6 miles back, so that didn't take very long there. When we'd run to Peebles or any place like that, it was about 12 miles one way. It took a while, and you could make all that time and never see a car. They just wasn't hardly any cars, and people didn't go anywhere hardly. Only usually they would go on Saturday evening or Saturday night to town. Some of them went, and that was about the only time they'd be off the farm until next Saturday night.
What about basketball games?
Well, we had our basketball, but we had an outside court first, and then they finally got a wooden gym. And but we had our professional teams too. We had the Seaman Doughboys, and they played games there, like we played the House of David, and the Olsen Swedes, and then the teams in the county too. And that was, but then in high school they had teams too. But we always had to walk to school, and there wasn't no snow days because as long as you could walk through the snow, you got there. And of course, if you got your feet wet, going to school, they was wet when you came home. So, and we ate our dinner out of our desk. And we didn't have any cafeteria. You didn't have no snacks of any kind to buy, or no money to buy it with if it had been. So when Oliver and Tranquility, they consolidated with Seaman and started hauling kids in from Tranquility and Oliver School. We thought, gee, what are they hauling them kids all the way in here for? and that's the first school buses we saw. Well,
What about your baseball?
well, we played baseball too, and we had teams like. We had a Seaman team for it too, but we had, when we wasn't playing Seaman, we had from where Sammy Gorman lives up home, that was Jimtown. So we had the Jimtown team and had a Seaman team, and out towards West Union they had what they called Buzzville, and they had a team. And we couldn't beat Seaman, but we could get Buzzville with us and join together, we could both beat them then. So Buzzville and Jimtown could beat Seaman then.
What about equipment?
Well, we had, when we played softball, we didn't have no equipment, you just bounced. You didn't have no gloves or nothing. And on baseball, we had a glove just not much bigger than your hand. But we did have gloves for baseball. But
Did the catcher have a glove?
I caught baseball with a fielder's gloves and no mask or no shin guards or nothing. And they got to beating them down on my head, and I got so oblique that I couldn't catch anymore. I had to go to the outfield. But then when we played basketball, they bought one basketball a year, and you practiced with the old ball. And of course they had the bladder lining in them. You had to blow them up, and they would kind of get lopsided, the old ones, and you practice with a lopsided ball. And then when they had the game, they had that ball they bought at the first of the year to play games with.
I'd say back then you guys didn't have to worry about conditioning.
What's that?
I,
You're right.
I doubt you had to worry about conditioning back then either.
No.
And
But we had one coach, Whitey Davis, when he took his paddle to basketball practice, and if you wasn't doing right, he'd say, "Grab your ankles." Whack!
Oh.
And once in a while, he'd just make everybody grab their ankles, and he'd give them a whack to give us a jump start.
could you dunk it after that?
No, nobody dunked it. There wasn't nobody big enough to dunk one then.
Do you play any other sports? Or baseball and basketball? Or those it?
Crochet.
Baseball, basketball, and softball, that's all we had then.
Could you
Of
ice
course,
skate?
What?
Could you ice skate?
Yeah, I skated in the winter, yeah, when they had a good freeze and ponds or creek froze over, we'd go skating. In fact, we had the ice one time, and I skated to town back of it on the street. But
Do you have any fun stories from when these were little, when Mom and Uncle Richard and everybody were little?
I don't know if I want to hear any.
I don't know,
It's
just
your idea.
seems to me like we worked about all the time.
I know I couldn't talk tobacco, but I could do laundry.
Yeah. And you could cook.
I could cook.
I read an awful lot of water meters.
You
Yeah.
read water meters.
Yeah. Yeah. We was going down at Miss Carhan's one time. She had a big collie dog and had trim back, make it look like a lion, you know how they did them. And that dog was water mouse. I had the kids with me, and I said, "Looky there, kids, Miss Carhan's got that lion trained to talk like or bark like a dog." And Miss Carhan she's there, she got a big kick out of it.
What was your first car?
First what?
Car.
Well, it was a 28 Model A.
28 Model A. And what year would that have been?
Probably about 32 or 3.
Not bad.
Maybe longer. No, it'd been longer than that. Yeah, probably it was 10 years old. It hadn't been. be $50 for it.
50.
Well, it's
Whoa.
not the same.
Hmm.
Whoa.
And but them old things that sit there and run tick, 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 all day about if you want to.
Yeah, but what one did you roll over in Chet Gray's field?
A 36 Ford.
What'd you use it for?
With running and making dust. And
That's
I hit a check hole. Go guitar.
So that's where I did my driving ability. It didn't come natural.
What was your first tractor?
First tractor. International H.
Now I can't remember if it was you or if it was my grandpa Garrison, but were you the one that walked across the Ohio River when it froze over? The grandpa Garrison. Yeah, I couldn't remember who it was, but when the Ohio River froze over, he walked from Aberdeen to Maysville on the river. I couldn't remember.
And
if that
some
was
of
you or
them
not.
took a car out on it, on the river.
Mm.
But now, before 1933, they didn't have any dams in the river. And it would get low in the winter time and sometimes in the summer. And they would take wagons and drive across the river into Maysville. And I just wonder now, they got Wagner's Riffle Road, and I just wonder if that was a riffle across the river or a river across Brush Creek. But I would just imagine it was a riffle across the river that they crossed. But I knew they said Dad drove across the river to haul stuff to Maysville, and he worked for Horsey Mill or something. He said he hauled to Ripley and back, and in the wintertime he'd have to walk all the time because he couldn't ride the wagon. And of course he had to walk to work, and he had to be there about 5 o'clock in the morning and started out hauling. Of course, he was lucky to have a job. A lot of people back then, there's several of them, would just go and work for their board and chewing tobacco.
Yes, ma'am.
They didn't get any money, they just got their board and chewing tobacco.
Well, while you're on tape, I've got a question for you. Now, Larry and Richard had paper routes
Yep.
through town. And I had to get up every Sunday morning and help put those Sunday papers together.
Yeah.
And more often than not, I had to go collect Larry's paper route for the money for that one. The question is, why didn't I get any money out of it?
You'll have to ask Larry and Richard about that.
Collect mine.
I didn't go collect yours, but I helped deliver your papers on Sunday and helped put them together. Why is it I never got any money? You were the head of the household.
Why didn't you ask Larry when you had one come?
It
I
was just for the
Well, I might have been the head household, but we all put them papers together. And I'd take them down and let them out and let them run it.
How many houses were on your paper route?
I don't remember.
No.
Half a seaman.
Half a seaman, Larry had the other half.
Yeah.
What, 32 houses?
Yeah, 30, yeah.
I don't know, when you were collecting, it took forever to get through some of those places.
They always said that the richest guys was the one you had to watch. It wasn't the poor people that could get the money.
yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Now on tape, since we're doing this, how many brothers and sisters did you have? And I assume you were born at home. Would that be correct?
Yeah. They was 15 altogether, but some of them died young. I never saw, let's see, there was 2 older brothers I never saw.
They died before you were born?
Well, I was born when Bill, he was over in Germany in World War I, and I was born then, but I don't, if I seen him, I wasn't old enough to know. And then Jim, he died from, well, I always heard a mad dog, but Miss Campbell said it was spinal meningitis now, so I don't know which it was. But that was before I was born too. So then during the operation there, they got family was kind of mom and dad all together there. Ruth had been married, and she was married before I was old enough to know that she got married, really. She never did seem like a sister to me, really, because she never was home.
Now, how many brothers and how many sisters were there? You said there were 15 total.
Let's see.
Give us names.
Well, Bill and Jim and Bose and Chester, Frank, Earl, and me. How many was that?
7.
Okay. And then there was at least one boy died young. I don't know what, I forget. I'd have to see the things to tell you about how many others, but I know there's about 3, and one of them was a boy anyway, so that'd been 8 anyway.
Okay. Well, I think Dorothy's getting ready.
Stop it again.
Okay.
I mean,